how do you think about your role as kind of, playing defense sometimes?
Yeah, so it's really akin to what the majority leader just described. I mean, we obviously don't want to get sidetracked and go down rabbit holes on every, potentially nutty thing that comes from Washington over the next, 2 to 4 years. But we will be laser focused on 2026. And of course, we have to be able to maximize messaging and get that turnout in the midterms to the extent we can. So I think it's kind of a dance, it's, particularly when you're coming from a minority party position. There's no way we can just be silent about what's happening, because then why we got to have something to talk about, right? We have to make sure that we're pointing out the differences between our party and their party. And certainly we are anticipating, because healthcare is such a critical issue in Georgia, the Affordable Care Act coming under attack. And so we are bracing for that. We are already creating message box for things that we anticipate. And I think the way that we thread that needle is not just to run down the rabbit hole, but give the folks something specific to tie the message to. There has to be a good guy and a bad guy in the story. And we want the people of Georgia to see us and our policies as the policies that are good for them. And then point out where there's mismanagement, point out potentially where there might be corruption, point out potentially where there are folks benefiting from these policies that are not everyday Georgians, and make sure that the folks know that we are watching what is happening and we have an alternative vision for the state. Of course, we want the president to be successful. I would want for him to do a good job for the people of this country, because I love this country. And so I'm not wishing any of these terrible things to happen, but I do think that we have to understand, because we've seen this movie before, what we might be up against. And so, our policy, of course, if we had the majority, perhaps we could poo-poo and insulate ourselves more, like as much as we'd like to dismiss this stuff. But because we don't have that power, all we have is the microphone. And we have to make sure that when we are pointing out the differences in these policies, that we have to make them in such a way that it makes sense to folks. So to use the example of, folks that have to go get gas $5 at a time, they're buying 2 gallons at a time. If we're messaging about some policy that comes down from Washington, or some position that comes down from Washington that, the Republican trifecta is trying to echo, then we have to make that message hit folks where it matters most. So it's not that we're silent, it's that you hone in a message that is specific and that resonates with people on things that they care about every single day, like going to the gas pumps, like going to the grocery stores, like affording rent, like being able to purchase their first home, like trying to make their deductible, like the fact that their kid might not have health care. So it's going to be, I think, an intentional dance. We can't just say the things, we can't just message policy anymore. We've got to start talking to people and meeting them where they are. And if we get an opportunity to point out in a clear way why our policies work for them and their policies work for someone else, then I think we have to take that and be really clear in what we're saying.